Well, this bad boy right here is a Ryzen 3 3100. And you're thinking, Ryzen 3 3100? What are you doing with that? I'll tell you what I'm doing with that. I'm going to race it against a 5800X. All right, so at first you're probably thinking, all right, first of all, Ryzen 3, they don't even make a Ryzen 3 anymore. It's on the AM4 platform at 3.6 gigahertz, boost to about 3.9, 16 meg of L3 cache, and runs on PCIe 4.0 when all the rest around it were running on 3.0. Now, you did have some other things as you got it higher in the stack, 3600, 3700, 3700X, et cetera, that were 4.0. But a lot of the Zen 2 did not run on 4.0. It ran on 3.0. So that means that more modern video cards, from about the RTX 3060 and the RX 6000 series on up, they would run just fine with the CPU. Why are we going to run it against a 5800X? Because 4-core 8-thread is as good as 8-core 16-thread? No, that's not it. Just because we can. And when I started doing this, I started running numbers, and I thought, wow, how far off is that? It's not very far off in some circumstances. We're going to take a look at some of these numbers coming up here, and I wanted the 1440p numbers and then the 1080p numbers. The 1440p numbers keep this well within reach, and we ran it with an RX 6600 XT, 8 gig. I was surprised when I did this because if you're 1440p gaming, this little thing, if it's all you can get a hold of, and I bought it for like $40, $35, $40. If you can get a hold of one of these, this might hold you over on an AM4 platform while you're trying to square away everything else. You're not losing a whole lot in performance. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we always test right out of the gate with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We did this again. We did it on 1440p and 1080p. With a couple of these games, we did low, medium, high. A couple of these games, we just did 1080p high and 1440p high. The default for the RX 6600 XT is FSR3. We're not playing around with that yet. After the first of the year, FSR4 will be available for this, maybe. And still, I've got a 9060 and a 5070, an RTX 5070 and an RX 9060 XT that I might do some FSR3 versus FSR4. But for right now, we're doing the Ryzen 3 3100 against the 5800X, both of them using that same build with the RX 6600 XT in it. A 32 gig of memory, I believe it was clocked at 3600. And these, when we did this, at first I was just like, okay, we'll see what happens and see if it's still any good. See what it might compare to and if it holds up. Well, truthfully, it holds up pretty well. And when we started comparing, I thought, well, what could I compare this to? And I said, you know what? Just compare it to what you're running in your test bench, that 5800X. And the reason why is we'll look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider here, and we're going to start to see a little bit of a pattern. As you're in the higher not the higher textures, but the higher resolutions, especially 1440p, the GPU, the graphics card, is doing most of the work, but the CPU is keeping up pretty well. Now, when you go down to 1080p, where the CPU has to do more work, yes, you can see a bigger difference. And the lower in resolution you go, the bigger difference you see. But at 1440p, this thing holds up pretty darn well. When we switched to Borderlands 3, I haven't started testing Borderlands 4 yet, but when we started testing Borderlands 3, 1440 hung right with it. And then even at 1080p a little bit, 1080p high did all right, but you could see the same pattern. 1080p low, very big difference in those two, and it's very, very noticeable. But at 1440, like I said, this thing is holding pretty well, and it's giving that graphics card enough to go with to render things at 1440 without much of a problem. When we look at Cyberpunk, you've seen the pattern before. You see what it's looking like again. This very much so holding right with the 5800X. Now, the 5800X is not a slouch. We know that's the only thing better on the AM4 platform is the X3D chips. And this is 8-core 16-thread, and really I ran this in my main rig for quite a while until I switched to the AM5 platform, but this thing runs great. There's no issues with this CPU at all, and it does everything you want to do. Multi-core as far as production, any type of productivity work, any type of gaming, whatever. This CPU really holds up well. And at least at the higher resolutions where it's making the GPU do more work, this 3100 is hanging right with it. No issues, no problems. Everything was smooth. We didn't have any. There was no long wait times or anything like that. It just ran really well. And with Counter-Strike 2, yeah, we noticed a difference. Now, there's probably more compute going on with this than there is graphics, but this thing will basically run. CS2 runs on modest hardware, but still, we got good frame rates. We just, the 5800X was just better than it was every time. Then we step back again into a newer title, and I expected this would be where we would start to see a big difference in some of these figures, and it would really drop off bad. And quite frankly, in some cases, most cases, I did not see that. In Black Myth Wukong, almost neck and neck for both 1080p and 1440p. Ran these at high, and it ran really well. Again, no stutters, no problems. There's times when I'm running this benchmark and things like the water or the grass and stuff like that looks a little bit weird. None of that here. It ran great, and the CPU and the GPU kept up with each other very well. No issues, no problems at all. Marvel Rivals was one of those. When I first started testing, it looked a little bit weird to me. I retested with the 5800X. Well, I mean, they're fairly recent, but it had been a couple weeks since I tested. I went back and all was right with the world. At 1440p, again, fairly close. 1080p takes a wider margin. It does make some separation there. Then we got to Black Ops, Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, of course, there's always that hitch. Is it going to work? Is it going to require me, secure boot? Is that going to do right? Is that, the anti-cheat or whatever? What thing do we have going on with us today? Well, I had to go through and jump through all those hoops, but that wasn't the story. What was the story is that the 5800X just ripped this 3100 to shreds. Now, it was okay. We could probably play with the settings a little bit, but I ran it on 1440p, what they call Ultra, and 1080p Ultra, which is basically just the high setting. And there was quite a bit of difference with that 3100 and the 5800X. And when I did it, I made sure to rerun it because this and a couple other games, it's always waiting for those shaders to load. You always have to do that and make sure that the shaders completely load. Otherwise, it skews your benchmarks and it skews your gameplay. Well, I did that. I made sure that the shaders got completely loaded and they were completely done before this, Marvel Rivals, and actually Black Myth Wukong. That was the one that loaded shaders the quickest. But a lot of these more modern games, they want you to load those shaders first before you start playing or benchmarking or doing whatever. But it didn't make any difference. This 3100, it's a good chip. Don't get me wrong. Very good chip. And it's been solid with everything else and done a great job. But as far as Call of Duty, Black Ops 7 was concerned, it didn't keep up very well at all. It surprised me a little bit how far off it was, but we're talking, it didn't even reach 60 frames per second. And the 5800X obviously was over 100 frames per second. Quite a disparity in those. But still, given all the results we had with all the rest of the games, and I kind of have to be careful because it does have pins on the back of the CPU instead of on the motherboard, this performed very well. And if you can get a hold of a cheap AM4 motherboard, I would say one that at least supports PCIe 4.0. So maybe a 400 series or 500 series, maybe a B450 or B550 or something. If you can get a hold of one of those, and you can get a hold of some memory by hook or by crook, this might not be a bad option for you. Now, you probably can get another CPU like a 3600 or something like that and be slightly better off. Maybe I have to test those with against each other. But I have a feeling that the 3100 is going to hold up really well against the 3600 as well as it did the 5800X. So if it's just a matter of putting together an inexpensive PC that you can upgrade later, this might be a good step. And it's not going to disappoint. And it might give you time to go ahead and use this CPU for a while you're trying to save up money or trying to get things figured out for the RAM and for storage and for all that other stuff that does cost more money right now. Motherboards are relatively inexpensive. Used AM4 motherboards should be fairly cheap. They will range all over the place, so beware, buyer beware type thing. But yeah, I got this. Actually, this came from a recycler. This came from a recycling place, which I've done quite a bit of lately. When I look on used places or eBay or whatever, I'm giving more of these recycle places a little bit of a chance because I can see what's going on. And usually the price is decent, and if there's any issues with any of the stuff, they don't have a problem telling you. If they're selling it as broken or untested or whatever, they tell you. In this case, it was being sold as used. Found it for a good price, and it's mine now. Will I use it in a build? I might, because for that very purpose, I can build something inexpensive that's going to run really well and surprisingly keep up pretty well too. I was pleasantly surprised. I knew this was a pretty good chip. I had built a computer for a dear friend of mine, Chelsea, a couple years ago that had a 3100 in it, and I'd often wondered if that CPU or that processor was letting her down at all, because we never really talk about that when we do get a chance to talk. But now I'm pretty happy to know that I don't think it's the processor that's letting her down. If anything, I might let her down, but that processor won't. So anyway, yeah, I just thought I would go ahead and test it and check it. Well over 60 frames per second in most games, 1440p. Really, really decent, especially with a moderate card like that 6600 XT. You can probably get that for about $220 on eBay used. Yeah, so it's pretty decent. 1080p is not going to do as well as maybe a newer, faster chip, but I mean, still, it's going to be decent. It's not going to be bad at all. It works out well. Now, it does keep up okay. It has decent performance, but you can find things that are more expensive and have better performance. But for this type of budget, like I said, I got this processor for less than $40. Pretty darn good. You can find them for $40, $41, $42 all day long. And yeah, I would say it's worth it. So that is all I got for right now. I got this because somebody had mentioned it and said, hey, look, you remember that 3100 from long ago? And I thought 4-core, 4-thread. Then I started thinking, well, yeah, but the 3100, if I remember, and then I remember the 3300X, the 3100, and then there was something special about that, and it was because it ran on PCIe 4.0. Now, if you go back and you look at the Ryzen, I believe it probably still is a Ryzen 3. The 4100 from the next generation after, there wasn't a whole lot of 4000 that were mainstream. But if you go back and look at that 4100, I believe that's only PCIe 3.0. This one was a whole generation. And what that means is that things like your everything from your NVMe drive to your graphics card, the faster bus speed, more data will move, so it's going to be faster. It gives you an advantage for a budget that some of the newer stuff might not quite have. So it's definitely worth it. Yeah. So if you got anything out of the video, go ahead and throw a like on it. I appreciate if you've ever used one of these 3100s or 3300, I believe it's 3300X, especially if you've used one of those, let me know. The Ryzen 3s, well, they haven't put out a Ryzen 3 in a long, long time. And do we miss it? Yeah, kind of. But do we understand why they don't do it anymore? They don't really need to. When you can put out a 3600 or a 5600 that does really well and it's moderately priced, maybe you don't need the Ryzen 3. So you guys will have to let me know. Let me know in the comments there. If you're not already subscribed, like I said, throw a like on the video if you liked it. If you're not already subscribed, please do. That would be wonderful. Don't forget to hit me up on the socials. But if you don't do any of those things, just do me one favor. Same thing I ask all the time. Just be good to each other. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Be nice. Smile, wave, hold the door open, say good morning. A little effort that doesn't cost you anything at all could really make a big difference in somebody's day, or maybe sometimes even somebody's life. So until next time, when I get myself into something I got no business getting into, and you can see the stack back here is working on getting cleared up a little bit. That's because I've been working on some stuff. There are other things going on. And yes, there will be more and more to play with. But anyway, until I get myself into those things, That's all I got for now. So I'll see you later.